We welcome to the desk our good friend, attorney Kim Baer, discussing something that a lot of people have been talking about as of late. We're talking about non-compete clauses in contracts in the state of Iowa.
And how awful they are.
Okay, so in the broadcasting world, we're used to this.
This is pretty much the norm, in case you don't realize this. If you're in broadcasting, be it radio, be it TV, even in newspapers, I go so far as that all media in general, if you work someplace, you can't just get up and if you work for, say, Channel 23, you can't just go across the street and work for Channel 9. You can't do that because there's a non-compete clause. You have to a period that you have to sit out and not work at a competitor's television station, for example.
But do other companies deal with?
Yeah, other companies deal
with
it. You know, we see it in the IT field. We see it in the restaurant field. If you know there are secret recipes.
Remember, there was a big case with Mustard's restaurant and their pizza recipe, which was
the tavern recipe, pizza recipe. Right, correct.
Well, and I think that's why there are medical centers west of 60th Street in West Des Moines, right? Because people split off and went into Dallas County instead of Polk, and so it happens in other professions.
It does.
But it's the worst in our profession. It's the most evil.
Well, okay, so the idea is that you just can't jump ship and go to a rival company or anything like that, or take trade secrets or whatever you want to call it. And it affects us, I think, here locally more because a lot of people stay here. They want to live here. They don't want to just pack up and move and go to a different region. They want to stay here, and that means they can't really work.
And the biggest argument that is used a lot is if I'm working here and I want to work here, I should have the right to, because Iowa is a right-to-work state.
Right, and Iowa is a right-to-work and an at-will state, and the courts really do not favor non-competes, but they will enforce them. I mean, as long as they meet certain requirements. And so those requirements are, first of all, geographical area. If, for instance, you own a shoe store and I'm working for you selling shoes and we're here in Des Moines and your only store is here in Des Moines.
Yeah, lose shoes.
Lose shoes, and you say,
hey,
Kim, I'm going to hire you, but you got to file this, you got to sign this non-compete because I'm going to give you, you know, my client information and all that kind of stuff. And I say, great. Now, if you're trying to say that when I leave, I can't sell shoes anywhere in the United States or anywhere in the Midwest, that's really too broad, and it's probably not going to be enforceable. But if we're saying anywhere in Iowa or 50 miles within Iowa, then we've got to take a closer look and look at the case law and kind of see whether or not that geographical area is reasonable. Time limit, we've got to look at the time. I mean, you can't tie me up, you know, for, you know, infinity. Right. You know, usually if I'm drafting them for an employer, I'll recommend a year, 2 years. Now, if you own the shoe business and you're selling me the shoe business, there are some recent cases saying that up to 7 years is fine.
Wow, that long?
Yeah, well, because if you think about it, if I'm paying you, if you're selling me the business and I'm paying you good money for it, I don't want you in 5, 6, 7 years going down the street and competing with me.
Opening up your store again.
Exactly. So that makes perfect sense. You know, and then how are we going to define the business? So let's say, again, the example of shoe sales.
Got it.
So let's say you say to me, Kim, when you leave, you can't go into retail. So you can't sell clothes, you can't sell pots and pans. That's too broad.
Yeah, way too broad.
Because really all you care about is shoes. And so I tell my business clients, you have to be careful. Let's narrowly tailor it if this is what you're trying to get done. And then another thing, when you know I represent businesses and then I also represent people. And so sometimes people will call and say, hey, I'm thinking about leaving my employer. I've got this great new offer, but I've got a non-compete. And so I'll sit down with them and take a look at it. And one of the first things I'm always looking for is, when did they sign it? And did they sign it when they got the job offer? So there has to be what we call consideration. And what that means is, if I'm going to give up my right to go work somewhere else, you have to have given me something of value. So a job offer is considered something of value.
That's pretty weak, though. You know what I mean?
All right, well, what about this, Kim? What about you're working for a place?
Yes.
Okay, and then down the road, maybe the owner realizes, well, you're a valuable employee. I want you now to sign this, so you don't leave.
And I've dealt with those situations. And so if the business calls me and says, hey, I've got this person, and maybe I forgot to have them sign the non-compete, or just as you said, now I want a non-compete. We talk about, well, you're going to have to pay them for that. And then the question is what's reasonable? Is $1,000 reasonable? Is $5,000 reasonable? And so we kind of look at at how much they're making and the value of that. But if you just come to me midstream and say, you're not going to give me a promotion, you're not giving me a raise or a bonus, or you're not giving me some money to sign this, then there's really no consideration, you know. So that's one of the things I always look at to see whether or not it's going to be enforceable.
All right, so I'm the employer, and you need to sign this or you can leave.
Well, you know, that goes back to our at-will employment. I mean, if you always have the right to fire me, I mean, you could wake up one day and say, I don't like people with brown eyes anymore, Kim. Sorry, you're out, you know. And if I don't sign this, and this is part of the employment, then and I have to leave, then I'll leave, you know.
But
so
would you be able to go somewhere else then?
Right, because I haven't signed it.
Because you haven't signed it.
Yeah, I haven't signed it.
Okay.
I haven't signed it. Now, there's one other point I wanted to make. So Iowa also has a trade secrets law. And so a lot of times businesses will say, oh, I never did have that person sign a non-compete, or I don't use non-competes. And now they've taken my client list or my secret recipe and they're down the street at a competitor's. And we have a trade secrets law that covers that type of situation. And it protects things that you have kept secret that have value to your business.
Like maybe a manufacturing process that nobody else does, but you do. And
do you need to sign something for that, or that's just
a trade secret?
That's just a law. That's a law that's in place. Yes.
So if you had something that maybe your business did that nobody else did, or a process that you had, and somebody jumps ship and goes to a competitor, and they take that process?
Right. Customer lists usually qualify. Pricing list. I mean, anything that you've acquired and you would not share with a competitor that has value to you that you don't share with the public, but you shared with this employee because you trusted them.
Right.
Usually the trade secrets law will apply, and it provides for attorney's fees too. So that's the other thing I always like to throw in, because people say, oh yeah, I'm going to spend a lot of money, you know, I'm going to hire you, and what am I going to get out of it? And so I just always like to throw that out too.
So is your big beef that you just wish they'd throw in, if they say you have to be with us for a year, that they kick in something because of that?
Well, yeah, just giving you the job seems kind of weak. There should be like a bonus or something else thrown in. And, you know, if you're not going to leave a market, a no-compete really restricts you.
It does.
If you've got, and it doesn't have to be broadcasting, any job, but if you have roots here and you're not going anywhere, well, what are you supposed to do, you know, if someone sticks you?
And you're saying if we go to court with that, we're pretty much stuck. You have
well,
that
it depends. I mean, we have to look at it and see how it's drafted and see if it meets all those factors that we talked about. You know, I've negotiated outs for other TV anchors, and I've also I don't think I've represented any stations, but so sometimes it's a negotiation.
Stay on the good side.
Stay on the good side. Go to the light. Go to the light. Yeah.
No, but in in a situation like that with people that might be working for another company, regardless of what kind of company it is, and they say, okay, you're no longer going to work for the company, but you want to stay in town, would it be unreasonable to ask the current employer, say, well, I need some money so I can survive for a year, not to work somewhere else? Have you done anything like that?
Yeah, well, we've done it where we've negotiated it, where we've made it more narrow, so we've come up with a new contract, and so it's something that's palatable to both parties. I've also had represented employees who have bought their way out of a non-compete, who have said, you know, all right, you know what, I'm not that big of a threat to you, you know that, I'm not going to take your client list, I'm not going to contact your customers, I just want to be able to go over here and work for a competitor. And sometimes the employer will say, okay, well, for this amount of money, I'll let you out of it.
Let you do it.
Yeah. So there's always options.
Now, if people have any questions, of course, they can ask them absolutely free if they come by your office.
Absolutely. We offer a free 30-minute consultation, and we're right across the street from Vets Auditorium. Just give us a call at 515-INJURED.
There it is, just that simple. Well done again. We could talk about this for an hour. So
I know.
it's wonderful. Thank you so much.
I know. All right. Thank you, guys.